Ryan Miller had spent nearly a decade in the police force of Willowbrook, a modest city struggling with economic hardships and simmering social tensions. To the public, he was a model officer, dependable, committed, the kind of cop people nodded to in the streets. His uniform was immaculate, his posture authoritative, and his smile reassuring. But beneath the polished exterior lurked a darker side. It was a Tuesday morning when Mia Tran stepped out of her apartment building, phone in hand, scrolling through the local news feed. At 23, Mia was one of the city's new wave of activists, young, tech-savvy, and relentless in shining a light on injustice. For months, she had been filming the daily interactions between police and citizens, sharing clips on her TikTok channel, Truth Watch WB. Her goal was to hold officers accountable in ways traditional media often fail to do. That morning, she heard from neighbors about a routine traffic stop on the corner of Elm and Fifth. Mia had learned to trust her instincts. When people talk, there was usually more beneath the surface. She arrived just in time to see Officer Miller speaking harshly to a young black man named Jamal. The man was calm but visibly uncomfortable. Mia raised her phone and began recording discreetly. Miller's voice was low, but edged with menace. License and registration. You think you're above the law. Jamal reached into his pocket, slowly pulling out his documents. I didn't do anything wrong, officer. Miller sneered, stepping closer, invading Jamal's personal space. You're always didn't do anything wrong until you do. The exchange lasted less than 2 minutes, but Mia captured every moment. The tense tone, the dismissive attitude, the subtle aggression. Then, just as Jamal reached comply, Miller muttered under his breath, Go back to where you came from. Mia's heart clenched. She stopped filming for a second, unsure she had heard correctly. But Miller's words echoed unmistakably. The video resumed. Jamal's eyes widened, hurt flashing across his face. The silence between them was thick, suffocating. Mia's fingers trembled as she hit the upload button. The caption was simple yet powerful. Racist cop caught on camera in Willowbrook. This has to stop. Within hours, the video had exploded. At the police station, Miller sat at his desk, unaware his world was about to unravel. His phone buzzed with an urgent message from a colleague. You need to see this. He opened the TikTok app and saw the video. His face tightened as the views climbed rapidly, thousands then millions. The comments were brutal. Calls for his firing, accusations of systemic racism, demands for justice flooded the screen. Miller's fingers clenched into fists. How had this happened? He was careful, cautious. No one had seen this side of him before. But now it was out. At home, his wife Emily noticed his dark mood. What's wrong, Ryan? He forced a smile. Just work stuff. Nothing to worry about. But the truth gnawed at him. Meanwhile, Mia watched the unfolding storm with cautious hope. The video was only the beginning. The city was waking up. The TikTok video spread like wildfire across Willowbrook and beyond, sparking outrage, disbelief, and fierce debate. It was a simple clip, less than 2 minutes long. Yet it captured something raw and undeniable, a moment of blatant racial prejudice wielded by someone sworn to protect and serve. From the moment Mia hit upload, the video seemed to take on a life of its own, carried by the waves of social media, users hungry for truth and justice. At first, many people thought the video was isolated, a rare slip in an otherwise respectable police department. But as hours turned into days, the reality settled in. This was not an accident or a misunderstanding. Officer Ryan Miller's words and demeanor exposed a deep-seated rot that many in the community had suspected, but few dared to confront openly. Mia watched as the views skyrocketed from thousands of millions, with comments pouring in from every corner of the country. Some users expressed anger and horror, condemning Miller's behavior and calling for swift consequences. Others shared stories of their own encounters with discrimination and abuse, building a chorus of voices demanding change. The video was retweeted, shared on Instagram, dissected by online commentators, and even picked up by national news outlets. For Willowbrook, a city already grappling with racial tensions and a fraught history between police and minority communities, the video was a flashpoint. It ignited protests, peaceful at first, then growing louder and more persistent. People gathered in parks, city squares, and outside the police headquarters, holding signs that read "Justice for Jamal," "End Racism Now," and "Hold Officers Accountable." Local leaders and activists took to microphones to demand transparency and reform. At the police department, the mood was tense and fractured. Chief Douglas Hayes sat behind his desk, scrolling through the viral video, his face a mask of concern and disbelief. He knew the implications of the clip. It wasn't just a PR crisis. It was a direct challenge to the department's credibility. Calls came flooding in from city officials, the mayor, and the media, all demanding a response. Douglas picked up the phone and called Ryan Miller's office. "Ryan, we need to talk. Now." Miller, who had been trying to stay low, sat rigid in his chair. His jaw tightened as he heard the chief's voice. "Sir, No excuses," Douglas cut in. "This is serious. The video is everywhere. You're suspended effective immediately pending investigation. We have to get ahead of this." Miller felt a surge of anger and panic. Suspension? Investigation? The words hit him like a blow. "Chief, I didn't mean it like that. You don't understand the situation." "I understand enough," Douglas replied coldly. "We'll be looking into your conduct. I want full cooperation. That's all." The call ended abruptly. Miller sat back, feeling the walls closing in. His carefully constructed life was beginning to crumble. At home, the tension was palpable. Emily noticed a dark cloud hanging over Ryan. "What's going on?" she asked gently one evening. He avoided her eyes. "Just something at work. I can't talk about it." Emily frowned but didn't push. She remembered the last time Ryan had been in trouble, a minor incident years ago that had blown over quickly. This felt different, though there was a weight in his silence that unsettled her. Meanwhile, in the streets, the protests intensified. Mia found herself swept up in the movement she had helped ignite. She attended rallies, filming speeches, capturing moments of solidarity and defiance. The community's pain was visible. Faces of all ages and backgrounds unified in their demand for justice. The air buzzed with chants and cries for change. Among the protesters were Jamal's family and friends, their faces marked by a mix of grief and determination. Jamal himself spoke at a rally one evening, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "This isn't just about me. It's about every person who's ever been stopped, profiled, or treated unfairly because of their skin color. We deserve better." The local news interviewed community leaders who called for systemic reforms in the police department. Questions arose about training, oversight, and accountability. The city council scheduled emergency meetings to address the crisis. Inside the department, officers were divided. Some expressed frustration, feeling Miller had tarnished their reputation with his actions. Others remained silent, unwilling to speak against a colleague. Rumors swirled about the internal dynamics, the culture of silence, and the challenges of reforming a historically insular force. Miller's fellow officers avoided him in the halls, their gazes a mixture of pity and wariness. The camaraderie he once relied on had dissolved. He tried reaching out to a few, seeking support or advice, but mostly met closed doors. His calls went unanswered. He found himself replaying the video repeatedly, each viewing digging deeper into his conscience. At first, he dismissed the backlash as an overreaction, convinced the truth would eventually come out in his favor. But as days passed, the hostility grew, the calls for his resignation louder, and the evidence against him mounting. One afternoon, a meeting was called by the department's Internal Affairs Division. Miller sat across from two investigators, their faces impassive but eyes sharp. "Officer Miller," one began, "we have several complaints against you, including this video and reports of prior incidents involving discriminatory behavior." Miller's voice was defensive. "Those complaints are exaggerated. I've served this community with honor. This video, taken out of context, it's not what it looks like." The investigator shook her head. "We will review all the evidence, including interviews with witnesses and Jamal himself." Miller felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. The walls were closing in faster than he had anticipated. As the investigation progressed, more stories emerged from citizens who recounted troubling encounters with Miller. Some said he had made racially charged remarks during routine stops. Others described excessive force or dismissive attitudes. The department's records, once thought clean, were scrutinized and found lacking transparency. In the midst of this storm, Miller's personal life unraveled. Emily confronted him one evening after seeing news coverage that had become impossible to ignore. "Ryan, this isn't just work anymore. People are hurting because of what you did. How can you live with that?" Miller's defenses cracked. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone. It's complicated. You don't understand what it's like out there." Emily's eyes welled with tears. "I do understand. I understand that people expect you to protect them, to be better than this." He was silent, caught between guilt and denial. Meanwhile, Mia's activism gained momentum. Her TikTok channel, once a modest project, now had tens of thousands of followers. She used her platform not just to expose misconduct, but to educate her community about their rights and ways to engage with law enforcement safely. She connected with lawyers, social workers, and other activists, creating a network of support for those affected by police abuse. Mia's resolve deepened after a harrowing encounter at a protest where tensions escalated between demonstrators and police. She narrowly escaped being arrested herself while filming a confrontation. The experience strengthened her belief in the power of truth and the urgency of change. Amidst the public pressure, the mayor of Willowbrook held a press conference. She condemned the behavior shown in the video and pledged full support for the investigation. "We will not tolerate racism in our police force," she declared. "This is a moment for reflection, reform, and rebuilding trust with our community." The mayor's words brought some reassurance, but many remained skeptical, wary of empty promises. The scars ran deep. Back at the police station, Miller received a final blow, a formal notice of termination. The letter stated that his actions violated department policies and the city's standards of conduct. His badge and gun were to be returned immediately. As he packed his belongings, memories flooded his mind. The early days on the force, the pride he felt when he first donned the uniform. Now all of it fell hollow. Miller's reputation shattered, his career over. He was left to face not just the loss of his job, but the social consequences that followed. Neighbors who once greeted him avoided eye contact. Former friends severed ties. The man who had once walked proudly through Willowbrook now felt like an outcast. Yet, beneath the surface, a shift was happening. Miller's denial began to give way to uncomfortable reflection. The realization that his words and actions had real, damaging effects on people he had sworn to protect slowly settled in. Whether this would lead to genuine remorse or bitterness remained uncertain. As the dust settled, Mia looked toward the future. The viral video had been a catalyst, but the journey toward justice and equality was far from over. There were policies to change, dialogues to open, and healing to foster. The city of Willowbrook, scarred but resilient, stood at a crossroads. The story of Ryan Miller's fall was more than a tale of one man's misconduct. It was a mirror reflecting deeper societal struggles, a call to confront uncomfortable truths and to strive for a more just community. Mia knew her work had only just begun. She would continue to document, to speak out, and to inspire others. Because sometimes the most powerful weapon against injustice was simply the courage to expose the truth. In the wake of Officer Ryan Miller's suspension and eventual termination, Willowbrook found itself enveloped in a period of intense reflection and unrest. The story that had begun as a viral TikTok video now rippled through every facet of the community, its institutions, its neighborhoods, and its very sense of identity. The fallout from that one moment of blatant racism was far more than a personal reckoning for Miller. It was a reckoning for the entire city. The community's reaction was not just immediate. It was persistent and evolving. The first weeks after Miller's firing saw protests grow larger and more organized, transforming from spontaneous outbursts of anger into sustained calls for comprehensive reform. Mia, whose simple act of filming had ignited this movement, now found herself at the center of something far bigger than she had ever imagined. Her phone never stopped buzzing. Messages from supporters, from those who had experienced similar injustices, and from activists eager to coordinate efforts flooded in. Local organizers invited her to forums and panels, where she spoke about the power of social media to expose wrongdoing and the responsibility that came with it. Mia became a reluctant but effective leader, her voice representing a growing chorus demanding change. City officials, under increasing pressure, realized that words alone would no longer suffice. The mayor convened a special task force dedicated to police reform, bringing together community leaders, law enforcement representatives, legal experts, and civil rights advocates. The group was tasked with examining the department's policies, practices, and culture with an eye toward meaningful and lasting change. The task force meetings were tense and sometimes contentious. Police union representatives defended officers, emphasizing the stresses and dangers inherent in their jobs, while community members shared painful testimonies of discrimination and abuse. These exchanges were often raw and emotional, laying bare the deep mistrust that had grown between the police and the people they served. Mia attended many of these meetings, her presence a reminder of the power of one citizen's voice. She listened as survivors of police violence recounted their stories, each account adding weight to the urgent need for reform. She also heard from officers who acknowledged that change was necessary but struggled with how to navigate the traditions and pressures of their profession. Meanwhile, the investigation into Ryan Miller's conduct continued in parallel. The Internal Affairs Division worked meticulously, interviewing witnesses, reviewing body camera footage, and analyzing department records. Their findings painted a disturbing picture, revealing a pattern of behavior that went beyond a single incident. Miller's past complaints, once dismissed as isolated or minor, were reevaluated in light of new evidence. Several colleagues came forward anonymously, confirming that Miller had made racist remarks in private conversations and had engaged in aggressive policing tactics disproportionately targeting minority residents. These revelations deepened the scandal, further eroding public confidence. Miller, isolated and increasingly bitter, refused to acknowledge the full extent of his actions. His defense rested on claims of being misunderstood and unfairly targeted by the media and activists. Legal counsel advised him to maintain silence publicly while preparing a possible appeal against his termination. In the meantime, Jamal's case became a focal point for the movement. Jamal himself chose to speak out more publicly, understanding that his experience represented a larger systemic problem. His interviews with local and national media were thoughtful and measured, yet filled with an undeniable sense of urgency. He spoke of fear, the fear he and so many others felt every time they encountered police. He spoke of dignity, respect, and the fundamental right to be treated equally. Jamal's words resonated deeply with many, humanizing the abstract issue of police racism and transforming it into a relatable, urgent call for justice. At the same time, the community began to grapple with the psychological toll of the crisis. Mental health professionals reported increased cases of anxiety and trauma linked to police encounters and the fear of discrimination. Grassroots organizations stepped up, offering counseling and support groups, recognizing that the path to healing required addressing more than just policy. It required care for the emotional wounds inflicted. Schools also became arenas for change. Teachers and administrators initiated discussions about racial bias, civil rights, and the history of policing in minority communities. Students, many of whom had never before engaged in activism, found themselves galvanized, organizing walkouts and awareness campaigns. One such group was led by Jasmine, a high school senior whose younger brother had been stopped by police under questionable circumstances. Jasmine's leadership energized her peers, and soon their voices joined the broader movement sweeping through the city. Their message was clear. The future of Willowbrook depended on confronting its past and creating a culture of inclusion and justice. The police department, meanwhile, was under a microscope. New leadership was brought in to replace Chief Douglas Hayes, whose handling of the scandal was widely criticized as slow and insufficient. The new chief, Elena Ramirez, came with a reputation for progressive policies and community engagement. Chief Ramirez immediately set to work rebuilding trust, initiating town halls and open forums where citizens could voice concerns directly to officers. She championed transparency, releasing department data on stops, use of force incidents, and complaints in an effort to show accountability. One of her first actions was to mandate implicit bias training for all officers. The program, designed in collaboration with experts in psychology and social justice, aimed to make officers aware of unconscious prejudices that influence their decisions. Ramirez understood that training alone was not a panacea, But it was a critical step. Officer Miller's firing and the ensuing investigation served as a stark reminder to all officers that the days of unchecked misconduct were over. Many officers, initially defensive, began to embrace the changes, recognizing that reform was essential for the integrity of their profession and the safety of the community. Yet, resistance remained. Some veteran officers viewed the reforms as a threat, fearing that they would be unfairly scrutinized or that their authority would be undermined. Tensions within the department simmered beneath the surface, occasionally erupting into heated exchanges. Meanwhile, the legal system became an arena for accountability. Jamal's civil lawsuit against Officer Miller and the city of Willowbrook attracted widespread attention. The suit alleged not only the specific incident captured on video, but also systemic patterns of racial profiling and excessive use of force. The case was complex and fraught with challenges. The city's legal team argued that Miller's termination was sufficient and that isolated incidents did not constitute systemic discrimination. Jamal's attorneys, however, presented a compelling narrative supported by data, eyewitness testimony, and expert analyses. As the lawsuit progressed, it sparked broader conversations nationwide about the role of the courts in addressing police misconduct. Activists hoped that a successful outcome would set a precedent, encouraging other victims to come forward and forcing departments to adopt meaningful reforms. At home, Jamal struggled with the personal impact of becoming a public figure in the fight against injustice. The spotlight brought safety concerns, intrusive questions, and moments of doubt, but he remained resolute, driven by the hope that his efforts would prevent others from suffering similar pain. In the midst of these developments, Mia reflected on how far the movement had come since her first TikTok video. She had grown from a concerned citizen documenting an injustice into a voice of change. Yet she understood the fragility of progress, the need for vigilance and sustained effort. Mia's relationship with her family evolved as well. Her parents, initially wary of the protests and potential dangers, came to support her activism, attending rallies and volunteering. Their shift mirrored that of many in the community, where awareness and empathy deepened through dialogue and shared experiences. The city council, pressured by constituents, passed a series of ordinances aimed at reforming the police department. These included stronger oversight mechanisms, creation of a civilian review board, restrictions on use of force, and improved community policing initiatives. While these measures were hailed as victories, many community members cautioned that real change would require cultural shifts that policies alone could not guarantee. The conversations continued, often uncomfortable but necessary. In neighborhoods across Willowbrook, grassroots efforts flourished. Residents organized neighborhood watches, community events, and educational workshops, building networks of mutual support and vigilance. The goal was clear: to create a city where safety did not come at the cost of dignity and respect. As months passed, the memory of the viral video became part of the city's collective consciousness, a symbol of both pain and potential. The incident that had exposed the darkest corners of the police department also illuminated a path forward. Officer Ryan Miller, once the face of misconduct, receded from public view. His appeals failed, and he found himself largely isolated, a cautionary tale of what happens when prejudice overrides duty. Whether he ever fully understood the consequences of his actions was uncertain. For the community, the struggle was ongoing. Healing was neither linear nor complete, but the voices raised in protest had transformed into conversations about justice, equity, and accountability that continue to shape Willowbrook's future. Mia, Jamal, Chief Ramirez, and countless others remain committed to this work, knowing that change is a marathon, not a sprint. Their shared hope was that the scars left behind would become the foundation for a city that could truly live up to its promise of fairness and respect for all. And so, in the quiet moments between protests, meetings, and court dates, the city breathed, reflecting on a painful chapter now etched into its history, and looking ahead to a tomorrow defined by hope and the relentless pursuit of justice. The aftermath of the crisis in Willowbrook had stretched far beyond the initial outrage and viral exposure. It had sparked a movement that rippled through the very fabric of the community, shifting attitudes, institutions, and the ways people related to one another. Now, as the dust began to settle, the city faced a crucial question. What would it truly mean to heal and rebuild trust? Months had passed since the moment that changed everything. The viral video of Officer Ryan Miller's racist tirade had faded from the headlines, replaced by new stories and new struggles. Yet for many in Willowbrook, the impact was still raw and present. The city had endured a reckoning that demanded not just justice for a single incident, but a reimagining of the relationship between law enforcement and the people they swore to protect. Chief Elena Ramirez had become a steady force amid the turmoil. Her efforts to transform the police department were not without obstacles, but her leadership had brought a renewed sense of possibility. She understood that accountability and transparency were just the first steps in a long journey toward true reform. Under her guidance, the department had implemented community policing initiatives that prioritized listening and collaboration. Officers were assigned to specific neighborhoods to foster ongoing relationships with residents, attending community meetings, and engaging in outreach beyond the badge. The goal was to build familiarity and trust, replacing fear with respect. These changes were met with cautious optimism. Some community members remained skeptical, haunted by years of broken promises and systemic neglect. Others were willing to give a new approach a chance, hopeful that the department's culture could evolve. The path forward was not simple or guaranteed, but was being forged with intention and care. Meanwhile, the Civilian Review Board established by the City Council had begun its work. Comprised of diverse community members, the board was empowered to investigate complaints against officers independently and recommend disciplinary actions. This represented a significant shift from past practices, where oversight had been largely internal and opaque. The board's early cases were challenging, often exposing the limits of policy and the complexity of human behavior. But their existence sent a powerful message. No one was above scrutiny, and community voices mattered. The dialogue between the board, the department, and the public was ongoing, sometimes contentious, but essential. Jamal, whose case had been the catalyst for much of this change, found himself at a new crossroads. The civil lawsuit against Officer Miller and the city had reached a settlement that included financial compensation and commitments to reform. More importantly, it had opened the door for Jamal to become an advocate for others. He started working with local nonprofits focused on police accountability and racial justice, sharing his story in schools, community centers, and city halls. His journey from victim to advocate inspired many, but also weighed heavily. Speaking publicly meant reliving trauma and facing backlash, but Jamal believed in the power of truth to heal and transform. For Mia, the young woman who recorded the fateful TikTok, life had changed in unexpected ways. Her role as a catalyst for change brought new opportunities and challenges. Invitations to speak at events and participate in initiatives came frequently, yet she remained grounded in her desire to serve her community authentically. Mia continued to balance activism with everyday life, school, family, friendships, striving to be a voice of reason and hope. She found solace in support of those who shared her vision for a more just Willowbrook, but she also grappled with the weight of expectations and the fear that progress might stall or reverse. The community, too, was evolving. Grassroots groups expanded their efforts, organizing workshops on civil rights, facilitating dialogues on racial bias, and creating spaces where people of all backgrounds could share experiences and build solidarity. These initiatives nurtured empathy and understanding, helping to bridge divides that had long festered. Schools became hubs of engagement, with curricula updated to include honest discussions about history, systemic racism, and civic responsibility. Students like Jasmine, who had led walkouts and awareness campaigns, graduated to become leaders in their own right, continuing the work of activism with energy and vision. Yet, the city was not without its struggles. Resistance to change surfaced in unexpected ways, from entrenched attitudes within institutions to economic disparities that intersected with issues of race and policing. These complexities underscored that justice was not a singular goal, but a multifaceted pursuit requiring persistent effort. One particularly poignant moment came during the annual Willowbrook Day celebration. The event, once a simple festival, had transformed into a powerful gathering of community resilience and hope. This year's theme was unity and healing, reflecting the city's collective journey. At the ceremony, Chief Ramirez spoke candidly about the department's challenges and commitments. Jamal shared his story, emphasizing the importance of standing up against injustice while fostering compassion. Mia, invited as a special guest, reminded the crowd of the power one person holds to spark change. The speeches were followed by a moment of silence for those who had suffered harm or lost their lives due to systemic injustice. The crowd held hands, a tangible symbol of connection and shared resolve. In the month that followed, Willowbrook saw tangible improvements. Complaints against police officers decreased. Trust surveys showed positive trends, and community police partnerships led to safer neighborhoods without escalating tensions. The changes were hard-won and still fragile, but they represented hope. Media coverage, once focused solely on scandal, began to highlight these successes, inspiring other cities grappling with similar issues. Willowbrook became a case study in the power of citizen activism combined with institutional accountability. Even as progress unfolded, the memory of Ryan Miller's actions served as a somber reminder of the work still to be done. His story was taught in trainings as an example of what happens when prejudice is left unchecked, a cautionary tale etched into the city's collective consciousness. Miller himself faded from public view, living quietly, his attempt to reclaim his career unsuccessful. His name became synonymous with failure and disgrace, a stark contrast to those who chose paths of empathy and reform. The final chapter of this crisis was not the end, but a new beginning. Willowbrook's story was one of transformation born from pain, a testament to the resilience of its people and the enduring demand for justice. For Mia, Jamal, Chief Ramirez, Jasmine, and countless others, the journey was ongoing. They knew that change required vigilance and commitment, that progress could never be taken for granted. But they also understood the power of community, of coming together to face challenges and create a future defined by dignity, respect, and equality. As the sun set over Willowbrook, casting golden light on streets once shadowed by fear and division, the city breathed anew. The scars of the past remained, but so did the promise of a better tomorrow. And in that promise, the true victory of Willowbrook's story was found, not in a single viral video or headline, but in the hearts and actions of its people, who chose to stand up, speak out, and build a world where justice was not just an ideal, but a lived reality for all.